We go. We're
What?
going live. Okay. I think we are
We
live.
live? We live?
Happy Saturday. And I am here with Cheryl Graham. She is a professor in British Columbia
Yes, I am.
and she teaches people how to work with special needs kids. And today she's going to talk about the mental health stuff that she does when she's teaching her. She teaches a college course on adolescent mental health. So I thought we'd talk about some tips for adolescents or anybody really, and maybe some of the content that you present to your students and whatever else you want to talk about.
That's
So
right
in
on,
to begin,
man.
you can like maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then you can
I'd
start
love
talking
to.
about your course.
Yay, I'd love to. Anything. And anybody that has any questions, please just put them in the chat.
Yeah, if you join
So,
us in the comments,
honest.
talk to us, ask questions. That's what we're
Yeah,
here
because
for.
we would absolutely love, because this is a new modality for me. So I'm excited to be a guest on Jeff's show. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, I'm excited to have you.
And I'm Cheryl Graham, and I live in British Columbia. And so I'm usually the only Canadian in groups,
Oh,
but I don't mind. I represent my country well. But yeah, I work in a private college, and we teach kids. Well, sometimes they're kids, meaning 20, how to help special needs children. So in Canada, there's something called educational assistant, and it's like a teacher but for special needs kids of all kinds, of any kind. So, but to give you a bit of my background, enormous trauma. You don't come back from what I came back from, but yet I came back. So that's a story in and of itself. Highly gifted, Hep G, like highly, exceptionally, profoundly gifted. So I'm definitely up there as well. Empath, intuitive, like so many of us are, highly sensitive person. So I've been on a gifted and healing journey for most of my life, and have just done lots of different jobs, mostly in education. Like I said, I was an educational assistant in public schools for a long time, like 8 years. I've done ESL teaching, English teaching for, gosh, 15, 20 years as well. Got multiple degrees, and also worked in libraries because I
oh,
love books so much.
oh yeah, me too.
So I think that's sort of a little bit about my life. We grew up like so poor that we couldn't afford the last two letters, so we were Poe.
No. I imagine those qualities you described help you in the work that you do now. Do you want to
Oh,
talk a little
absolutely.
bit about the kid, like the you're teaching college students to work with special needs kids in the grade
Yes.
school, public school?
Yes. In well, K to 12 system. And yeah, absolutely. And so I really do, because I did not have great teachers when I was becoming an EA. They were not that great. And so I endeavored to be much better. In fact, to talk about my gifted experience as in school, because everyone knows that giftedness is a special need. Well, hopefully they do now. It is an exceptionality, and it's something that really needs its own care and attention. And
Mm.
this is the amount of stuff we got from my teachers. Oh, I don't know, about 10 years ago now, because there was a gifted chapter in our textbook, and I said, oh, we're going to talk about that. And then she's like, no, we're going to skip it, it doesn't matter, to my
Whoa.
face. And of course I said a few things, not as assertive as I am today, but I still said, what do you mean it doesn't matter? There are kids that need that. It's
It
like,
matters to
matter.
us.
I don't know, do you matter, Jeff? I think you matter to me. I hope I matter, you know
Well, it definitely matters to us. Did she mean that like most people don't need to know it because they're not going to be working with the gifted?
Yeah, that's what she meant. She meant that most people wouldn't, but there are gifted kids out there, and it's like a,
Gifted erasure.
like Horton here's a who. We're here. We're here. It's not like they're, just because it's a rare and precious thing doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve good care. So I tell my students all about it.
Well, good. So
All
some of
about
the
it.
work you do as part of your teaching is you teach about mental health.
I do. I teach a lot about mental health. Absolutely. Again, it's an exceptionality. We talk a lot. If I can tell you about what we talk about, we
Yeah.
talk a lot about the traditional stuff, anxiety, depression, a lot of trauma. So we do now because we have trauma informed schools, thank goodness. So we do try and give them a lot of information about, what does that look like, and then sometimes we do get into our own traumas because, it's hard to it's hard to help other people if you haven't looked at your own. And some of my students have come from traumatic backgrounds, you know, not all of them have, but we talk about what does a trauma informed school look like? What should we do about it? Like, just be aware if somebody has behaviors like acting out, for example, they may be coming from a different place, like a lot of attachment stuff. Example, reactive attachment disorder is a really good example of that, where these kids have had just traumatically brutal upbringings a lot of the time. Some of them are in foster care now, some of them are away from their families, but they come to the public school, and just try and be mindful that they're not like bad kids or whatever, the way people used to think. They've just been having terrible traumatic experiences that haven't really, helped them. Things that most people, average people, for example, can't imagine. So that's one thing. We talk a lot about anxiety because it is like the number one problem in today's youth. I think second to depression. So that's a very big issue. Like
Why do you
second
think that
anxiety.
is?
Well, I think it's also because of the way the world is. Like you and I, Jeff, we're older, we're Gen X, man. So we've seen the world before now, and it is very challenging now. It's surreal how challenging it is in the USA and Canada right now. It's like some kind of crazy storybook that you just want to close,
It
and
is a
yet you
little
cannot.
surreal. And I wonder how much social media plays into it. Because we don't
Well,
really
maybe,
know. It's hard to
yeah,
tell what's actually going on in the world. And the window we look out of is Twitter or Facebook or whatever,
yeah,
TikTok, social media. So we kind of get this mediated narrative of what's actually
absolutely.
out there.
Well, and that's a really, man, we could talk about that for 3 hours. Basically, and then you have the whole kind of, how do we put that? People who would like to stifle all other views, if I
Oh,
can
yeah.
skirt around that in a safe manner,
That's happening in the colleges too.
desperately, powerfully happening in the
Well,
college.
part of that, I wanted to ask you because you mentioned trauma informed schools. And when I went to college, you went to your classes, the professors lectured on the subject, you took tests, and that was pretty much it. So I'm wondering what a trauma informed school of today looks like. And I know that the concept of safe spaces, which is they use safetyism kind of to as one of the arguments for constraining or restricting certain types of speech. So I'm wondering how the safetyism and safe spaces plays into the new concept of trauma informed schools.
Actually, they are not the same things, but I can
Oh,
tell you a lot about it. They are not related.
we'll
Really,
talk
they're
about
not.
that.
Well, we do something that didn't exist. It's called the calm down corner, or whatever
In
you want to call
college with
it. No,
adults?
no, with kids. I
Oh,
teach them.
when you're
Oh,
teaching them to
college.
work with the kid
In college, I get a lot. Don't be controversial. I get a lot of that. Don't say anything controversial because you're
as
going
a
to trigger
teacher.
people
Don't.
as a teacher. So there's a lot of don't be controversial. Don't say stuff that might upset people. Where when you and
How do
I
you
went to
know what that
school,
like? Who
well, you
determines what
can't
that
always
is?
know. You can't always know what's going to upset people, right?
Yeah, I
And
don't. I don't ever
hello,
know.
I'm trying to build a curriculum here that's going to help them be awesome teachers. And so I've noticed we've had a lot of that sort of coming down. Like, make sure you're very sensitive to everybody's feelings. And I'm like, holy blankety blank. How about you go back to the 1980s and the Breakfast Club? Let's just talk about that for 5 seconds. Did they care about about the did the vice principal care about the children's feelings?
To me, they turned out fine. We turned out fine.
But we understood with there's a hierarchy. We understood that he was the vice principal, kind of a dick, but a vice principal, and they all understood that. I have had students tell me what I'm supposed to do in my class, like they're the boss. And
What
that
do
is
you tell them, or how do you handle
that.
that?
Well, I tell you what I want to tell them, but I don't tell them. I sort of say, "Oh, thanks. I'll take that under advisement."
Oh, that's
It's
way
gone.
diplomatic,
It's
in my
gone. Like
opinion.
it's gone super. Mad Hatter's party now. If you know about Alice in Wonderland, um, but I don't blame the kids really because it's this crazy world they've grown up with where they think that they have the right to go into somebody's classroom and disrupt it because they feel like it. So that's what we're talking about. Like it's crazy. So we have to be super careful about what we say, obviously, which I am because I do enjoy working there. That apart from that, is what I mean by that is we have more things to try and do self-soothing with the kids because we've learned a lot about um, emotional dysregulation and physiological dysregulation, right? And these are things that happen in trauma a lot of the time. So
Mhm.
I teach them a lot of things to help kids manage that because then their behaviors go down. Like we have things like they can get up and go for a walk, or they can go to something called the calm down corner, which maybe has stuffed animals or rocking chairs or
In
books.
college class, or this is what you.
Well, I think they do have some in some of the universities. We don't have that
So
because we are,
you're saying this is what you teach them when they're working with the kids they're going
yeah,
to be
in
working
the
with. I see.
elementary
Okay.
schools. In the elementary schools, we don't have that right now in the college, but we teach that, right? And then and breathing exercises and sort of like emotional regulation exercises and things like that to help them calm down. So that's kind of what a trauma, teddy bears, fidget toys.
Mm.
Back in the day, it was like, pay attention and sit there. Now they don't do that so much, like wobbly chairs, if they need a wobbly chair and,
I want to wobbly.
to move around and stuff like that. So we try and give them something that's going to make them manage things, meditation apps,
What is a
calming
medication?
music,
Oh, meditation.
meditation.
Oh, I
Yeah,
thought you
all
said
that stuff's
medication.
in the public schools now.
Is it in specific classrooms or the mainstream, or do they even have specific classrooms anymore? Is it all mainstreamed?
No, no, they do have specific classrooms. Well, it's inclusion though. So most of the special needs kids are in the regular classrooms, although there are things like sensory rooms or resource rooms that still exist. So definitely you can take your child there if they're having trouble, calm down rooms. We have all of that stuff now. So we talk a lot about that. I myself like to talk about the more rare things, like childhood schizophrenia, which
Whoa.
is extraordinarily rare, but does exist, kind of like giftedness. So, in sort of like, what would you do if you had a child with childhood schizophrenia? How would you help them and things like that? So that that's obviously the most extreme
What do they
aspect.
do? Because we're talking about just teachers, not necessarily trained mental health
Well,
professionals.
no, EAs are trained to do it though, because I know I'm training them.
What are some of the things that you do with
Well, you
schizophrenia?
have to, if they are hearing things or seeing things, you have to decide how you're going to handle that. I was working with a girl once who saw dragons and fairies. And so I had to decide, was I going to like argue with her? No, you're not seeing dragons. No, you're not seeing fairies or not, because the delusions are quite strong. You're not really going to getting anywhere. And the biggest thing is you want to build rapport with them, right? If you don't
Mhm.
have rapport with them, you don't have anything. So we just talk about it. We just talk about our dragons. And I I knew that I didn't think she was seeing them, but I didn't, I talked to her and she was fine with it. So that kind of thing. Have a schedule about what if the child's having a meltdown, what can we do? Is there any calming things? Maybe, they do have a psychologist they can talk to, or they can go to the counselor. Sometimes there's counselors in schools now, not all the time. So they're usually on a lot of heavy drugs though. Even as a child, so that affects things too often,
Mhm.
so that kind of thing, and other kinds of stuff and other kinds of modalities as well.
What are some of the things that the college students can do themselves to help their own mental health, or what are some things that you use that helps your mental health?
um well, I'm gonna talk about gifted people right now. Like, be with your peeps, man. Be with people who get,
Community or support network?
yeah, like, a community, like our wonderful community that we've talked about, where you feel safe with them. You feel like, like we had a beautiful group today and we had a whole bunch of people there and it was just a safe,
Oh,
wonderful place to talk. Not safe in the pejorative sense, safe in the usual sense. That you just
where you
felt
can be
good.
yourself. You can
You
just
can
be
be
natural
yourself.
and be yourself.
You can be yourself. You can talk about it. If you talk fast, everyone's fine with it because they talk fast. And we had a new guy there today, and he was like, I'm going to talk the whole time. And then Patty, our wonderful leader, was like, that's okay. Everyone talks. Everyone talks that
Yeah,
much. Don't worry about
yeah,
it.
true.
So stuff like
That's what we
that.
do.
So that has helped my mental health so much. Having people to talk to, having friends to talk to that
Mhm.
get you, that understand where you are. That's really big. For me, I don't know if this is PC or not, but I'm going to say it. Having a faith life is amazing for me. Talking
Having
to
a what?
God, like
Oh,
like faith,
faith and
talking
spirituality.
to talking to God for me is everything. Because I don't feel so alone, but not everybody's like that. Not everybody has that. Um, so it's whatever works for you. Maybe you're spiritual, but not religious. Maybe you have law of attraction and you just talk to the universe. Whatever works for you. But please, oh please, don't do what I did, which is I'm just going to pretend nothing's happening. I'm just going to pretend I'm
Oh,
fine. I'm just going to keep going and see if I can outrun it. I'm a cheetah and I couldn't outrun this. And that's the biggest thing I would tell people is you can't outrun your problems. They are faster than you are. And it doesn't matter how fast you are. So one day you got to look at it. You got to look at it because I think we've got a lot of examples from people, especially in the media and stuff, who didn't do that. And it didn't end well for them.
mhm.
So, that's what I do. See if you can get help, see if you can get some counseling, see if you can. Of course, it's harder as gifted people to get that, but I think I may have found somebody that might be working for me. I don't know. We had an
Oh,
amazing first session, so I'm very happy with him. So that's good. The crisis lines, they are not always ideal, but they can be super helpful to people in times of need.
yeah.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel like you're bad or something. Don't think that you're weak or you're bad, especially if you're gifted, because it's a hard road. Like I say to people when they say to me, oh man, I wish I could do what you do. I wish I could have what you have. And I'm like, you wouldn't want it if you had it. Because there's a lot of challenges that come with being gifted that maybe people don't quite realize. I mean, I'm born with it. We're all born with it, and that's people don't maybe understand. It's not like we all chose this, or maybe we did in some ways. I don't know, but we're all just born with it. It's a neurodiversity.
Mhm.
Like all about that. It's a neurodiversity. So whether we wanted it or we didn't want it, we have it anyway. It's where we are. It's who we are. So, like, own that. Own the precious, wonderful nature of yourself. That's what I would say.
Well, and you're right. We all go through, like, even gifted, non-gifted, whoever. We all go through or have the potential to go through mental health struggles or challenges or life stressors or
Mm.
whatever. And I think reaching out is important. That's what's helped me every time in the past than sitting there and trying to endure it alone or outrun it, like you said.
Absolutely, man. And I think though that we need more help. I'm gonna talk about it. I'm gonna talk about it.
Talk.
The state of mental health care in both of our countries is pretty abysmal. I don't know. What do you think? Talk
I
about
mean,
the
I've
U.S.
worked in them. It's very, to me, it's very bare bones. It's understaffed. There's high turnover. The competence level is they hire a lot of people fresh out of college and then they move on to other jobs pretty quickly. They seem it seems to be a band-aid. They seem to know how to maybe stabilize somebody or in the moment, but not much more than that. I don't see a lot of long-term progress or therapeutic development. Like, but I see this in the public school systems too. Like, I think the same thing about teachers. They like really good teachers that know how to teach are less common than the majority of teachers that are in the schools. I think really good mental health professionals that actually know how to help provide help to somebody that needs it, especially in the public, and I'm mainly talking about the public systems, are more rare than not. So I think the really highly qualified people probably um, they gravitate out of the public system to
Oh,
more.
absolutely.
And so the
Um,
public system itself is kind of whatever they can find to staff it, and it's
oh
hit or
yeah.
miss
Oh,
every time.
I could tell you some
I think
stories.
the bureaucracy is bloated, like it's top
Hmm.
down. Bloat the bottom where the actual work is done is under supported, under resourced.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think they have this sort of if I can because I this I think is super relevant to what you were talking about. They have this image that if we just pretend to be good, that's all we have to do. Like we have something called the Canadian Mental Health Association. Now they are paid by the government, I believe. Don't quote me on it, but I think they are. At least get grants or whatever to provide mental health care and support and advocacy and resources to the majority of Canadians. They do not do this, but they act like they do it. You know what?
I,
I don't know if you know what I mean.
I do know
But you,
what you mean.
if
Like,
they actually,
like
oh, tell
here
us.
they have they have numbers, certain numbers that the people at the top have to show the people with the money, and as long as they can show them the right numbers that they want to see, the money keeps coming. Those numbers don't necessarily accurately reflect the quality of healthcare and treatment that the people on the ground are actually receiving. And
That's what I
a
mean.
lot of like if you medicate and the symptoms improve, you can check that as a positive outcome and add that to your numbers. That doesn't mean the person that's what's best for the person long term, or they're actually a lot of it is short term because they see the people in such kind of brief scenarios in their overall lifespan. So in the moment, it's really easy to get someone to improve long enough to get a number to put on your tally to show that people, but I don't know that they pay attention to the long term process or give them long
Oh,
term
yeah.
support.
Well, and we're talking about drugs here. I mean, yeah, you can give anybody enough drugs to kill an elephant and their behavior is going to change, but that doesn't mean you've done anything with them, you've done any therapy with them or anything. You know, that, I mean, like you're not doing the work, you're just giving them a
It's
drug.
very easy to show results through medication. If
Um,
that's the only thing required to get your funding is to show a
so, and
certain
that,
criteria
I
for
mean,
positive outcomes. That's very easy to do without actually giving them the depth of help that they might need long term.
you know, anybody can give a drug. That doesn't mean you know how to do anything. So yeah, because I had a situation not too long ago. 'Cause, you know, I've had it. I've been there. I've had my challenges, and I was calling them, you know, saying okay, you know, whatever, and then they had a at because we have this very famous, quite famous, farmers market, well, famous for British Columbia anyway, and they had a whole big table there and all about mental health and let's do mental health outreach. And I'm like, great, that's great. I think it's awesome. So the lady was fine. I was talking to her a couple of years ago. And I called the phone numbers and it was embarrassing. It was an embarrassment. And not, they didn't have anything. They didn't know what they were doing. They hooked me up with this guy who, I swear to you, sweet man, not going to say anything about him, but he was so simple that, and he thought I was too. He was reading me this material that was written for like a third grader. And I'm like, buddy, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. What can you do? And he's like, oh, let's look about, mindfulness on page 3. Oh, I was so mad. No, it's not him. No, I don't mind him. The person that really made me angry was like the executive vice president woman, who then writes me, because I can write. I'm a writer. And says, oh, well, it's not all for everybody, it's more mainstream. We're trying to,
That I was
help.
about to say. I mean, she's right. It's for the middle of the curve, or even the lower.
And
It's
I'm
for
like,
whoever they can give the most help to,
and she
statistically.
was okay with it. She was okay with
Yeah.
being phony. She was like, as long as she gets her money, she's fine. As long as she doesn't actually have to help anybody, because
There's
she's
a
doing.
certain amount of inertia in the system.
Oh my God. So yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Just that's a personal soapbox, that we need actual help. We need actual people who actually want to help, not pretend. Right? That
There
actually
are
want to,
less of them than there are people that need it.
right? And there are people that really do, and it's heartbreaking when you meet some, because I've got, I've known people, is what I'm saying, and they have complex situations. And what are you going to do? Right? And, and especially if you don't have the money to pay for it, it's a really hard time, and you know what they need, but they can't really pay for it, because I was in that boat for a long time. I couldn't pay for it, and then what do you do? So I mean, that is alike, I think, with our countries, because I think we both have, therapies paid a little bit, but not that much unless you have like extended health or something. So I think we both have that situation.
Yeah. Sarah is in the room and she says,
Oh,
Amen. You should try living way out in the boonies like I do. Then the problem becomes what mental health services?
hey, Sarah. I lived in a super small town too. It was super embarrassing. I kind of still do now, but it's actually a little more affluent, so we do have a little more stuff.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
access is a problem, regional and geographically, and financially, because you do like you're gonna get the bare minimum if you can't pay for the higher quality stuff. So it does kind of depend on your ability to pay and your ability to access.
Because you were in a really small town, Jeff, right? What was going on
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I grew up in a small. Well, I didn't really need mental health services until I was a teenager, and we had access to larger towns by then because we had moved. So I was able to get, like, I was hospitalized at 16, and
Mm.
that did a lot for me. I was there for about 6 weeks, and I think that helped stabilize me a lot and set me on a good path from there, where I could kind of take control of my own recovery and symptom management.
Man, that's so beautiful.
But
Not
it was
knowing.
private pay too, and my mom had the insurance to cover it. I don't know that I would
Oh,
have gotten that from one of the public options.
yes, that is true. Um, that is very true. So let's see, where were we? Did you ask me something, or
Well,
shall
we were
I?
kind of bad mouthing the system, which pretty much
Yeah,
anybody
sorry.
that,
I
that
had to
tries
do
to
it. I
use
had to
it
do it.
pretty much knows how bad it is, and even some of the people that work in it.
Um,
But I want to
so yeah,
maybe get back to the like college mental health and
right.
what students can do, or teachers, or
Well, what do I
basically I'm
do?
trying to draw tips from your background that anybody could
We
apply to their life.
Yes, we talk about exam anxiety. That's a really powerful one. People have terrible exam anxiety nowadays. So we talk about what can you do to help your exam anxiety. Meditation is often a really good one. And I don't mean it in the way people might think. Like there's really
Mm.
good meditation apps. Yeah, you don't have to do that
What
unless it works
about
for you.
people like me that cannot sit still and does not have the discipline to sit there and meditate? Are there options for?
Well, they have online meditations or video meditations. You can walk around, you can
You
walk
just
around,
listen to them, but you can
listen
be
to them,
active.
like guided meditations, affirmations, because you want to get other things in your head. That's the big thing. I'm not a huge CBT fan, but I think cognitive behavior therapy, but I think this is somewhat useful. You want to change the tapes in your head, especially if you've had abusive upbringings. You are good at things. You are good at exams. You are smart, because there's also a lot of imposter syndrome, if I
Oh
can
God,
bring
yeah.
that up. Imposter syndrome is when you don't think that you belong somewhere good. You don't think you're really smart. And that's what drives a lot of exam anxiety, especially among smarter people. So you're like, you're healing that. No, you are amazing. No, you are wonderful. No, you are very capable of doing this exam. And so breathing's a big one. Like some we actually worked on this because we have a class called trauma and self-care. And so we talk about like the birthday candle breathing. Like
What is that?
you're trying to blow out a candle. So you imagine you have a birthday candle, you're trying to blow it out. So, and then and then it comes back. So you blow it out again.
Oh, like those trick candles.
And so, but it gets you to calm yourself. Or like you're counting things, maybe like you're counting the petals on a flower. How many petals are on the flower? And you imagine the flower, and then you breathe in like 1, 2, like
Well,
that.
just
And then,
watching you do it makes me feel calm.
hey, man. So we do stuff like that, or count the clouds, or things like that. So exam anxiety is something that a lot of students worry about. Panic attacks, we've all had it.
Oh,
Panic
I've had
attacks,
those.
brutal. I had them. So we
Those are
try and
scary.
talk about, and kids get them, unfortunately, nowadays. So what can you do about it? What can you change about it? So you can do breathing. You can do that. You can do mindfulness. So I talk about things like the 5 things. You guys have heard of it.
Oh, like look
Like,
at 5 things
yeah,
around you.
what are the 5 things you can see? Everybody find 5 things. The 4 things you can hear. Can you hear anything? And like the 3 things you can smell or whatever. But it brings your focus back. And then weirdly enough, this does help. Try counting. Because if you can't have a panic attack and count. So like, okay,
Just
what's three
straight
times
counting,
four?
just one, two,
Like
three.
1, 2, 3, 4, or like what's 3 times 5? What's 6 times 4?
Schoolhouse
And
Rock.
then you have, because your brain's a different brain process. So if you can do that, and if you're with somebody, and then you can like, okay, and then try and get them to think about other things like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite ice cream? And you're talking to them, get them to, and then you will get them to calm down. You will. And then, do the breathing thing with them too. And so that's something that we definitely do. We have talked about. Overwhelm, of course, overwhelm. So we talk a lot about how to organize everything so that you don't get overwhelmed, have a
And it's kind of
schedule.
mentally overwhelmed or
Yeah, like,
cognitively overwhelmed.
and then you get panicked or you procrastinate because you're so overwhelmed, and then you're late. I've had some students do that. And then you like have 3 assignments due in like one day. And I'm like, please don't do that. Don't wait till the last day to do all 3 assignments, you know? So that's something that we can help. And there is a lot of people that have the ADHD these days,
The
or
what?
maybe it's ADHD.
Oh, mhm.
Well, ADD is actually not its own diagnosis anymore. There's ADHD and inattentive type, ADHD combined, and ADHD,
Hyperactive.
hyperactive. So, and we talk about that, and, how do we help the kids in that situation? So, and some of them are in that situation at times too. So make sure you have some kind of organizational system, like different colors for different binders, so you don't have to think about it. Make sure you have a notes app or something on your phone, or take a picture of it, so that you have it for later. You don't try and remember it. Set apps on your phone so you're not late, for places. Send, reminders to yourself so you don't miss the doctor's appointment or whatever. So things like that. that maybe, only studied for short periods of time because you can focus better that way. So whatever works for you.
Mhm.
So that's some of the stuff, that's some of the other stuff that we will do on occasion, you know.
And do you use some of these things yourself?
Well, I've been blessed that I don't have those things myself. I'm 2E in the sense of having severe post-traumatic stress disorder, which is enough, and depression and anxiety. So I did have concussion though.
Somewhat.
So I did have some multiple concussions,
Oh,
which leads to something called post-concussion syndrome, which is bad. So yeah, I do have memory issues still. So I write things down a lot. I use my Apple Notes on my iPad and my iPhone to because my short-term memory, man, it's like. And I used to like I was an actor there for a while, so I could remember things pretty well. So now I do that. I tell them to do that. So I do that. I do have the panic attacks from time to time. So I do make sure that I've gotten better at the breathing because before I was like, breathing, what is that? You
yeah.
know,
That's
that's not
still
going to help anything. Oh my God, it does. I thought it was stupid, but it really helps you so much because you're biohacking your body, right? You're biohacking it a little bit. And you're like, okay. And the big thing is don't feel like you're helpless with it. And
right.
that's somebody actually helped me. I had a health coach a couple years ago because the University of Victoria had a study pairing people with health coaches to see if they would get better and stuff. And I got a really wonderful one. Third time, I got a really wonderful one. And she
Oh,
was like, you have more power than you think you do. So that's something I would say to people because, well, if you've had the panic attack, right? You feel super powerless. How was your power?
oh, it's scary. It feels like you're having a heart attack and you're going insane at the same. So you don't know if you're heading into psychosis or if you should call 911 and get the ambulance because you're. I got taken when I was teaching. I got taken out of the school 2 or 3 times on a stretcher. That's before I knew it was panic attacks, thinking I was having a heart attack, and I would
Oh
go tell the
no.
school, and they would call the paramedics, and they would come and take me for examination, and it was panic the whole time. And one time I was teaching and I was giving the kids a test, so they were quietly working on their test, and I thought it was like Fred Sanford, like this is the big one, Elizabeth, this is it, this is a heart attack. And I said, you cannot do this in front of these kids. You cannot have a heart attack in front of these kids. You have got to keep it together. So I held the heart attack in. I didn't call anyone or leave the room or anything. And I know that was the wrong thing to do, but I was thinking about the kids and the effect it would have on them if they saw their teacher have a heart attack. Because that's what they feel like when you don't know that they're panic attacks.
Yes, yes, but you did the right thing though because it wasn't. I've been in the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack too, and you're not. It's like it's
No,
just a
but your heart
panic thing.
races and
It
you get
feels
it,
like you are.
and your breath gets real sharp
You
and
can't
you start to get
breathe.
that clammy,
You get
sweaty
the
feeling, and then your mind
you get
starts to like
woozy.
spin
You
out
feel
and get
woozy.
distorted, and you think, oh, I'm going
Um,
crazy, I'm having a break.
yes, but you really aren't because I know I've sat in the hospital like hello 8 hours later, and they're like, no, I'm fine now.
Yeah,
And
I've
they do give you all the tests, and they give you all the heart tests, and apparently you are fine. So not that you shouldn't go because it is hard to tell the difference, but
it does
um
pass. If
and
it's
it
just it's
does.
your adrenaline like coursing through, and once that
Yeah.
subsides,
So
it's gonna pass.
because I still get them from time to time, but I know now that no, it's not like that. And it is, and what I do, and I think that would work for anybody. Get it when it's super just beginning. Learn to tell the
Learn,
very
yes.
beginning of it, because then, and she was telling me, this woman, wonderful woman named Merritt, you can stop it then. You can't stop a stampeding rhino, but you can stop it before it starts running, maybe. You know what I
Yeah, when
mean?
the first rhino comes out of the gate, you can stop that
You
one
can
rhino.
stop it.
I've gotten really good at knowing the exact signs. like Kimberly, I can feel them in my body and hitting that cold water because it's your sympathetic nervous system. So the sooner you can de-escalate it and get it back to that parasympathetic, and the minute it's that nervous system starts to get agitated, I run for my
Yes.
cold water or the breathing if that's what helps some people, and before it has a chance to get too ramped
To
up.
ramp up. Exactly. Mine happened a lot when I was driving because I had this car accident.
Oh, that must be
It
scary.
wasn't even, yeah, it was terrifying. Wasn't even that serious, but of a car accident. But so mine tend to happen when I'm driving, unfortunately. So, and I got to drive for an hour to get to work.
Oh no.
So, I don't have the option of not driving because I don't have a family that can drive me. So that's what I do. I'm like, I know the feeling, I know what it is, and I talk to myself because I metacogitate a lot anyway, being so alone for so many years.
Mm.
So I have quite a rich internal life anyway. Um, and I make sure my breathing because a lot of the time I hold my breath, which is another mental health thing, right? If you've had severe trauma, you hold your breath a lot and you don't know. You don't even know you're doing it. So she was really big with okay, are you breathing? Are you not breathing? Be aware of your breath. Be aware of your breath. So check in like multiple times a
That's
day. Am
hard
I
to
breathing right
do.
now? Am I breathing right now? Because you won't know. I didn't know. So
I
maybe
never
you're
pay
not even
attention to my
breathing.
breathing.
Maybe you're not. And then you're like, you're going to pass out. You're not breathing. You don't even know you're not breathing. So that's weird stuff. But the trauma can be so bad because, we involuntarily hold our breath when we're having
Mhm.
trauma. And if you have it as long as I had, like decades, it affects you. So that's something that I do. And I tell my students to do too. Like, if are you breathing? Are you no, because you can't get the oxygen to your brain. You can't if if they're having the test anxiety, you can't, you won't know the answers if you can't breathe through it. So that's something that has helped all of them anyway. And me too. So that's a big one, the breathing issues too.
I'm
Yeah.
a very shallow breather naturally, and I don't pay attention. Like I'm not conscious of my breathing throughout the day, so it's
Yeah.
very hard for me to establish healthy breathing habits, especially this late in the game.
Well, it is. It is. And I ended up with a disorder, apparently. I'm going to go on May 25th to get a lung workup. But the pulmonologist woman, because I've had terrible breathing problems and they didn't know what it was. And they thought it was asthma, but then it's probably not asthma because all my lung tests seem to come out fine. And it's this newer thing called breathing, no, dysfunctional breathing pattern disorder. And what it is, it's kind of a combination physiological, psychological disorder where your breathing isn't automatic anymore. You've had so much trauma or so much stress that your breathing's kind of dysregulated. So,
Mm.
um, and you think about it too much. Like I think about it all the time because I can't breathe all the time. So it's like a problem. So she's like, and then you get anxious about it. So, and then, and if you shallow breathe too much, then your system grows that way. And then when you try and take a deep breath, it's harder because your muscles are super strong in your neck because that's where you breathe, but not strong down in your stomach where you're supposed to breathe
Like from your diaphragm,
by
that's
your
what they say.
diaphragm. So
Yeah.
they're much, much weaker there. And this is like super strong because that's where you store a lot of your stress. And so it's harder almost to breathe a different way than to breathe, like to be a neck breather, because you're been doing that for 40 years or whatever. So she's going to help me with it. I think,
Oh,
I'm hoping, because
well, let me know how
there
that
is
works.
treatment. There is treatment for it, but she wants me to go and get a full workup. But so that can be like, there's a lot of other stuff that can happen with the mental health that's related. You know what I mean? Like autoimmune can be related. I have an autoimmune disorder now. And we cannot talk, unless you want to ask me a question. If we cannot talk about this without mentioning the ACEs. I think we should mention the ACEs. What do you think?
Go ahead and talk about those. That's the adverse childhood
Yeah.
experience
Yeah. The
score.
adverse
Yeah.
childhood experience scale, which I also teach to my students. They can take it. I take it with them. I'm a 9. The only reason why I'm not a 10 is my parents way too cagey to get caught by the police. Stupid in most ways, but cagey. So, and that's serious abuse if you've seen it. It's 10 questions, and it talks in very blunt ways about your experiences as a childhood before 8 and a child before 18, as a way to quantify, because there was a study from Kaiser Permanente in the US, and they were trying to quantify what it was like to have childhood trauma and growing up with childhood trauma, because we know that growing up with severe childhood trauma puts you at a huge risk for
Well, it
a
has
lot.
developmental impacts too.
Like, it affects your life so profoundly. And I know when you and I were younger, they didn't think it was a big deal. They're like, yeah, whatever, brush it
Well,
off, get
yeah,
over
and
it.
everybody has, you know, goes through stuff with their family, and every family has problems.
Yeah. But what she did, this woman in the YouTube video that I was looking at, was like, no, that's not true. It affects your ability to get married, to have children, to be healthy, to have a job. It affects your entire
And your
life
attachment too.
and your attachment. There's huge attachment issues. I have huge attachment issues. I will tell you, they're not a good time. They're not fun. They're hard. So that's something we do as a class, I think, in our trauma workshop thing that we do. Now, it can be triggering for people. So I do mention that. I'm like, okay, like I'm like, you guys, you don't have to do it in class if you don't want to. Have a look at it. See if you feel comfortable. Because some people, they're in denial. Well, I was in denial for most of my life because that's how you survive. But
Oh,
eventually,
so a lot of times they're facing it for the first time just from
yeah,
doing this
I've
exercise.
had that happen because, well, it's a very direct question. Like, did you or your, family face, adversity? Were you hit as a child? Were you, constantly yelled at as a child? Did you watch your mother being beat up as a child? Were there alcoholics in your family? All of that kind of thing, right? And if someone's not really aware of their childhood much, but answers all the questions, then they're like, holy, I've had a pretty brutal life, which maybe they haven't thought about before. So it does
Mhm.
tend to bring things out for people. I don't know. Have you done it personally yourself, Jeff?
Oh yeah, I've done the ACEs many times. I don't know my score. Mine is not that. I didn't have a terrible childhood. Most of my stuff was in adolescence, and not much of it was from my home life. It was more social trauma.
Mm, yeah. So that's
So I
something
was
we,
never physically abused, violence or anything like that.
well,
So
that's
a lot of
good
it was
then.
psychological, just from growing. When you're the misfit kid, growing up weird and different,
Oh,
some
yeah. I mean, that's hard
psychological.
enough without having the other sort of,
Yeah, like
you know,
ostracism and marginalization, stuff like that.
oh, that's still
The
bad.
scapegoating, a
The
lot of
scapegoating, we
stigmatizing,
talked a lot about
scapegoating.
that.
Yeah.
Today we talked about it. Barry's one of our group, was talking a lot about how he was the scapegoat and everything. I think we all completely agreed with him. I certainly was in the golden child, scapegoat, a dyad, and what a brutal thing that is for both people. Really, you'd think the golden child's life would be better. My sister's life isn't better
I was
now.
never treated as a golden child.
I never was. But some people were, and it was very challenging, I think, for them um, too. It was very hard.
Well,
But yeah.
speaking of development, do you want to talk a little bit about the Erickson stages?
Oh my God, I would. I love Erickson. I should sing my
Me too.
Maslow rap too for everybody.
Oh, you should.
I have a Maslow rap, everyone. I
Maybe we
I
could
tend
end on
to
that.
I'd have to find it, but it's really good. It's to the tune of Ice Ice Baby. That's what it is. Imagine Ice Ice Baby in your head.
Which
Ice
is
Ice Baby,
Pressure from Queen and David Bowie.
which I didn't even know that. Because I never knew that song. I
Yeah,
didn't
he
know the Pressure
sampled
song.
he took his little dun, 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 dun.
I
Oh, I don't know
didn't
if I can
even
say
know
copy dun, 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 dun. Let me change it a little bit. I don't want a copyright
maybe
strike.
because I never
Okay, maybe
heard that
just move
song.
on to Erickson. I want to keep my
We'll move
channel
on to
as long as I
Erickson.
can.
But anyway, well, they did do that song "Pressure" in the movie for the
Uh-huh.
yeah. So I was like, where have I heard that before? It was a nice, nice baby after all. So Erickson, God bless him, had a wonderful psychosocial theory that applies really well to adolescence, but also all throughout your life. That if you did not meet these stages, you would become arrested, not in as harsh a way as Freud. Freud was much more strict about his ideas. So Erickson was much more calmer about his. I'm just looking. Ages, okay. You. Sorry. Arrested. Not. I'm trying to find something else. That was me. Oh my God, I was just meta there for a second. I was meta. I was listening to me be me. I love meta people. But anyway, Erickson, he was a Swiss psychologist, I believe, and he thought that everyone goes through stages like trust versus mistrust. That's your first stage, right?
Like that's where you develop or fail to develop at that stage.
You develop or you don't develop trust in the world, right? And so that's for babies. Like babies either develop trust in their caregivers or they don't. So a lot of traumatic stuff that happens when you're pre-verbal, that's why it's so bad, because you have absolutely no way of coping with that. You are totally helpless to the environment that's around you. So like the first 5 years basically really shapes your life. You know what I mean? It shapes your life. You can fix it, you can change it. I mean, I think I am really a good poster child for the fact that you can change your life, because I have changed my life. But it's yeah, so that's it. And then so that's 0 to 1, and then like 1 to 3 is autonomy versus shame and doubt, which is, because you're going through this sense of individuation from your mother, right? Because your mother and you are the same when you're a baby, but now it's like, no, I have my own self, and kind of the terrible twos and all of that. I am my own person. I am my own person that has my own feelings. And that's when a lot of the trauma happens too, because if your mother is very psychotic or projective or narcissistic, she's not going to like the fact that you don't want to be with her all the time. So it's something, so she might make you feel shame, she might make you feel bad for just trying to be yourself. So that can happen too. Or maybe your family is wonderful and it's like, yes, go explore. So then, you develop your wonderful sense of attachment. So you feel like you have a secure base, like John Bowlby. So you can go, and he was a very big attachment researcher. And so you can go and do that. But what if you can't? So that's the shame and doubt. And then 3 to 6 is initiative versus guilt. So some of that is like, you want to take initiative, you want to do your own thing, you want to go out and find friends, you want to go out and play, you want to go out and do different things. And your family again might make you feel bad about that. Like, stay with me, don't go out and play with your friends, you're not my baby anymore, all that stuff. So then it's like your identity becomes more and more foreclosed. And the gifted experience is even harder, because you may not be like your family, may not be at all like your family, right? Like I was not my family. I never knew my father. My father was very gifted. I was basically the one of my kind in this family of let's just say lower functioning welfare type people. No offense to people with welfare, though. I was on it for a while. But the kind of thing, it's sad because you have no mirroring. You have no person that says who you are. So you just believe what anybody says, and they make you feel bad. So then you're in elementary now, like sort of 7 to 11. It's industry versus inferiority. So this is elementary school. Do you feel good about yourself? Do you have self-esteem? Do you feel like you can make something of your life? Even then, even as a young person, do you have friends? Can you play with kids? Can you do that? Or do you feel bad? Are you the lonely kid? Are you the kid that everyone picks on? And that can happen to anybody, but you can imagine the gifted kid, the sensitive, gifted, enlightened kid.
I don't have to imagine.
You had it. I had it. We both had it. So that's brutal. right? They make fun of you, they be mean to you, they hurt you, and everyone thinks it's funny. So it's not funny. And so after that high school age, it's all about identity, isn't it? Even now, it's all about who are you? Are you with the cool kids? Who are the cool kids? Are you popular? Are you not popular? You want to conform in a lot of ways because it's this brutal sort of factory high school is of like trying to get along with everybody else. And, I think it's maybe a little easier nowadays than it was when we were in school in the 80s.
I don't
We get
know. To air them on social
Breakfast
media,
Club.
it's gotten worse.
Well, we didn't have social media back in the
Yeah,
day.
that's true. Is this where
Uh,
role confusion comes in at this stage?
yes, 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 absolutely. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you want to be. And sometimes you just believe what your parents tell you. You like rocket science. You're going to be a rocket scientist like me, or you're going to look after the family business because that's what we want you to do. And, maybe you want to go and, teach Spain, teach Spanish in Spain, or maybe, you want to go and be an artist somewhere. And they're like, art's stupid. You're not going to do art. So if do you believe yourself? That's where the rebellion stuff comes in. Or do you acquiesce? Do you
Yeah.
acquiesce? So that's sort of the identity versus role confusion, and that's very serious because that could, plan your whole life, you could end up being somebody you don't want to be in a job you don't want to do because they told you to do that. And that happens to a lot of adults.
That's also the primary integration or the
Yes. Oh my God.
negative adjustment that Dabrowski talks about, where you,
And I would say positive disintegration, absolutely worth it. But you're going to feel like you're on this surreal roller coaster that just keeps going backwards.
yeah, you
What do
can
you think?
adjust to the image society has for you, or you can adjust to your own authentic self. But if they're in conflict, or if, what, because society is rarely gonna
Yeah.
know what your own authentic self is. So whatever they're presenting for you to adjust to is likely not aligned with who you actually are inside. And so
And you have
it's
to
some
pick
people will
ultimately.
choose one path or the other.
I would tell the younger people who are in college, pick you. Pick you.
I would
Don't do
too.
what I did. Don't pick
I would
everybody
too.
else. Pick you. Right? Because I could tell you more
And
about
the
my
world's going to benefit too by you picking you. The world's going to benefit from your unique gifts and talents and strengths that you bring that comes from your own authenticity.
that maybe you're the only one that can bring.
Yeah.
So I wish I was able to do that. I'm doing it now and I'm feeling good about that.
Uh,
Um, and I think it's awesome and I'm so grateful to be doing it now. So as I say, I'm a 3 moving to a 4 in Dabrowski's level, if you want to look that up. But to get back to Erickson for a minute, 19 to 29 example, sort of young adulthood. It's called intimacy versus isolation. Now, are you going to go out and meet people? Are you going to go out and have friends? Are you going to go out and expand your life, blossom your life? Or are you going to be like isolated in your room by yourself because nobody talks to you? And unfortunately, a lot of people are like that. So they don't get married, they don't have boyfriends, they don't do that. And some of them do it because, like me, their families basically don't let them do it. But sometimes you do it because you feel anxious or you feel like nobody wants to hang out with you or whatever. So that's the big skill is, can you be with other people? And then moving along, there's only 2 more stages. Once you hit 30, that's kind of the prime of your life. So what are you going to do with the rest of your life, right? So it's generativity versus stagnation. Do you make something of your life? Do you do something? Do you plant things? Do you have kids, or do you have a job, or do you have a life, or do you have a mission, even a goal? Whatever do you have? Or do you not? Do you walk around not knowing what you're going to do and not knowing where you're going to go? And so you don't make much of it. And so that's that. And then of course, he has an old age one. Not everybody does, but his old age one is like from the time retirement age, which is later now. But back in his day, it was around 60, 65. It's called integrity versus despair. Can you look back on your life and say, yeah, maybe there was some trouble, but I did good things and I feel integrity in my soul? Or do you have despair because you either did bad things and now you feel bad about it because it's caught up with you, or you didn't do what you wanted to do, and like, don't die with the music still in you. That's what that means, right? Because it's a sad thing. So, and that's sort of Erickson's stages. You want to live. You want to live your life. You want to be who you're meant to be, because only you can be it.
And trauma can impact whether you, or adverse experiences can impact whether you successfully navigate each stage or not.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he didn't talk about trauma exactly himself, although it obviously would interrupt and arrest any of those stages. And of course, none of that's your fault. You didn't do anything, so because that is the really challenging part, is so much of our life doesn't have as much to do with us because we're not in control of the situation when we're babies or when we're little. We are now as 50-year-olds, whatever.
Right.
But
At some point we are, or have the capability to be.
yes. Yes. So, but in the beginning, we are at the mercy of people who tell us things about us. And if you have wonderful people telling you wonderful things, that's great. But what if you don't have that? So that's the journey that so many people are on now, trying to reclaim and excavate their authentic self, which I think is so worth it. And I'm doing too.
That's what I try to help people do too.
Mm.
Absolutely. Do we get to hear the Maslov rap?
Oh my God. Okay, hang on, let me get it. Because I always love sharing it. Here it is. Okay, you guys ready? Are you ready?
I'm excited.
Okay. Da, 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 da. Maslow, what a sharp hip dude. He's got a needs theory, with stage one being food, not just food, sex, air, sleep. Wow, this dude, he's plenty deep. But hey there, man, we've got 4 to be had. Safety's next, and that can be bad, especially if you've got an abusive dad or mom, or bullies to make you frown. You might get so injured you don't know up from down. But by then, you see, stage 3 is here, and into the eyes of love you appear. I say, into the eyes of love you appear. Peer and see and peer. We all need someone we love to be near to us and love us well, because then we can learn to love ourselves. I say, then we can learn to love ourselves. Break it down for me, fellas, but don't break a sweat. Here we are now at our next stage, where esteem needs get met, but only if we don't forget how great and wonderful we all are, and how we all will go so very far. But only if you or me, and you or you, because by then we become a person who's new. I said, by then we become a person who's new. A brand new being, that's what we'll be. Self-actualize, and you will see. Well, that wraps up my wayfinding map. I hope you enjoyed the Maslow theory rap. Word to your mother.
Word. Well, I can't think of a better note to end on. So thank you so much for coming and talking, and I'm sure I'll see you around.
Thank you so much,
for
Jeff.
those of you, she's part of the Gifted Twice Exceptional group that I've been talking about. So if you want to come and be a part of it, you can email me at primalhex, primalhex @gmail.com, or on Twitter under the same name. And thank you again, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.